Good afternoon. Yet again, we remind you about our interview. We've been telling you about it since 12 o'clock. And with us in the studio, Marina Coleman. So let's welcome her. A very warm welcome. And right here, Hellenic Radio, 14:22 a.m. It's great to have you in the studio.
YOULA, thank you. What a great compliment. And it really does feel like a bit of an extended family here.
Isn't it? Hey, that's what everybody feels when they come here. They all say to me, but I'm nervous to be on radio. And I say, just come over. And you kind of get a vibe over here. It's chilled, it's homey, it's community-based. So I think people just relax straight off the start of the show. It is wonderful to have you here. I see a very colorful, wonderful book that we're going to discuss here today. Marina, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do and what have you studied? Just to get a little intro going.
Thanks, YOULA. Okay. Well, I am of Greek descent. My mother's Cypriot and my late dad came from Kavala, from northern Greece. Grew up in South Africa, but my parents have always been big restaurateurs, and my mother is of the Three Sisters restaurant and Cafe Three Sisters fame. And
big shoes to fill, huh?
Big shoes to fill. And there was always this kind of contrast growing up of food versus going on and educating and going on to university, which I did ultimately do. I went to Wits and I studied psychology.
Okay.
And
makes two of us.
Oh, that's a very good degree, YOULA. And I really encourage lots of people when people discuss psychology with me, and I say, don't keep it small. You've got to look at the bigger picture. You've got to look at
it's unbelievable though when you're studying psychology and you're young and inexperienced and kind of you can't put the puzzle together. For me, that's just how I see it, because then I've delved into it afterwards for my own personal life, and it's unbelievable the benefits that you get by discovering why we do certain things because of our past, because of childhood circumstances, experiences. It's amazing.
That's exactly spot on. Yeah. And I feel exactly like you. I endorse exactly what you say. So, you can finish university and you're not quite sure where
you kind of don't know where
it's going to fit in, as you've said, how the puzzle piece ultimately fits together. Yeah. And in my case, I had 3 beautiful children and came back to live in South Africa. I lived abroad for 3 years. And when we came back, I went to an orphanage. And I started stimulating and enriching little babies and the staff. And it was my first experience of HIV.
With babies?
With babies. And YOULA, it's the one thing that people must understand is that this particular virus changes very quickly. The research, people invest a lot of money, so like in the case of the vaccine. And there's this ongoing thing that the world changes around HIV.
Sure.
And that is one of the charms of my book, which we'll cover a little bit later on.
It's unbelievable to me because it touches so many aspects of our lives, HIV. And the fact that you encountered it like that with small babies.
And it was terrifying at the time. What was really scary was at that stage, so we were talking about early 2000s, at that stage, they weren't really convinced about ARVs, so a lot of babies would get sick very quickly and would die. Yeah. And at the orphanage, I really learned a hell of a lot about the survival and what happens with babies. The next step up was that Standard Bank had a really, really good wellness program. And wellness means they have people in Standard Bank. It's the whole broad spectrum of every kind of diabetes and high blood pressure and HIV, and they had a really, really good program. And what they needed was a 2-day life skill program to add on to that, which I actually ended up going with a friend, and we ended up having to do a trial, and it went very well.
Fantastic.
And the next 5 years, that was what the work was.
So you never expected to be involved in HIV, in spreading the word, and helping the fight against it. You never expected that.
Never expected that. But the most interesting part was that when a door opens and it presents itself, you have to go through it.
Sure.
So what was happening was lots of peer educators that we were training were coming back and saying, Marina, we're going on to the communities. We're passing on the message of what you've been training and teaching us, but we're not leaving useful, relevant information that is easy for people to read.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, so there is something. So what do? We live in the northern suburbs. Where do we go for material? I went to look.
Okay.
It was a quest, like, where do you look for material? Where do you go? Exclusive.
Is the net not a good source? Because
It wasn't
I
at that
would imagine
stage.
that it would be, but sure, when we're talking of early 2000s,
And we're also talking about peer educators who were going into rural areas, who were spreading the word into their communities. And I was like, let me go and just take a look and see what material is out there.
inspiration hit.
Inspiration hit and Exclusive had nothing.
Sure.
CNA
Are you serious?
had nothing. CNA had nothing. I then went, you know what, maybe I'm too exclusive. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places. So what about Salt City or Love Life, or what are they giving to people when they're going to a clinic? And I went and I got a little bit of information and I gave it to my oldest daughter, Demira, and she looked at the material. She was 12 at the time, and she came back to me and she said, Mom, is HIV a black disease?
Sure.
And I
Were
was
there diagrams there?
completely- It was completely, it was almost bordering on being so archaic. It was a picture style nurse situation where they were only answering one chapter at a time. It wasn't conclusive. It wasn't everything about HIV and AIDS. And the next part of the puzzle was meeting Sifiso Yellow, who's a cartoonist from the Sowetan, and looking at the medium of cartoons and saying, you know what, it needs to be colorful, it needs to be simple, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to be something that any age who picks it up will be able to read it and be riveted. And it took 18 months.
Wonderful.
It took a long, hard amount of time
And research.
and
I'm
research. And we pulled this book together, and we're very proud at the moment. We've won an award for it.
That's
and
awesome.
We've done very well.
Because one wonders, especially back then, when people got the diagnosis, if they did go for the blood test, and they came back, and somebody would say to them, well, it's positive. Where did they go? What did they do? And how did they move forward? That must have been devastating, not having information.
And not having the support structure in place, and being completely shocked and overwhelmed as to what to do.
Okay.
And we cover all these areas in the book, and it's pretty, it's an accurate and guide resource book that shows everything from the beginning right through to how you should prevent it, how you can avoid it. But if you're living with it, what are positive things about going forward? And the most important thing are your constitutional rights. So everything in this book, it's 82 pages, it's all encompassing.
Right. And how then did you get it published? I've spoken to friends of mine, and I know about the journey to get something published, if it ever gets there. How did you manage that?
I think that in today's world, and especially with things like 50 Shades of Grey, there's a very different reality. Before, you would always look down on self-publishing, and you'd be like, to self-publish means that the material isn't good enough.
Okay.
I think people should be excited. I think people should not be scared.
How do you do
be
that?
out
How
there.
do you self-publish?
So
So you just put money and go
You
and...
put that money, you find a good distribution, you go on to e-books, you can do all these things today. The world has changed. My book, I went to Jacana Media. They are absolutely fabulous. They were very, very honest right from the beginning, and we weren't sure, but the most important thing for me was that this book was not going to be an expensive book. And right from the beginning, I sat down and I went, this isn't for... I want it to be massively produced. I want people to be able to access it and to have it at an X amount.
And your intention was to help people. Clearly
Always.
that's what you put
Always,
out
and
here.
not to make money. And at the end of the day, YOULA Jacana were very supportive. And our first print run was 10,000 copies. Now, if you're doing 10,000 copies, this is another thing about publishing and about books. The higher the number that you're going to be publishing and distributing, the cheaper the price.
Okay.
So you should always aim for the most that you can afford, and then distribution is key. Distribution is key. I have a dedicated friend who is my partner, and she spends probably 50% of her day, Jane, doing and
Jane.
selling. She's listening and selling the book.
Okay, so you can't just go to bookshops and say, here's my book, put it on the shelves. You need to go to specific places.
You've got to decide. So you can certainly, and I know that Jacana really have an open door policy. You've got to have something that's a little bit different. You've got to go in there and be confident, but at the same time, to trust that you've got to trust, if you're going to go the publishing route, that you trust your publishers. And in my case, I had an unbelievable team. We looked at it, we went to print 10,000 copies, we sold it in the first 3 days.
What? And what Marina was telling me before is that for a book to be considered a bestseller, you need to only have sold 8,000 copies. So that was news to me, and you topped that in 3 days.
Topped the 10,000 in 3 days.
Sure.
And
what an achievement.
And thank you. Well, I think it's part of the team, and it's part of having really good, strong people around you. And of course, family members who are supportive and spread the word. And then you do have to, and YOULA, this is important, in publishing, in distribution, you need to have your brand out there. You need to have the confidence. You have to have a website. You have to be the person that, that posts blogs. I post blogs. And it isn't easy for me. It isn't easy, in your busy life with family, wife, children, to do it. But the more you put out there, the more you're going to get back.
And in the early 2000s, Twitter and Facebook weren't really what they are today. Today it's quite easy to put it out there in that forum as well. So you had to do a lot of work.
Yeah, you've got to be rooted in where we are right now, in reality, and to understand that a book like 50 Shades of Grey has completely rocked the world, and she did it completely out the box. So there's lots and lots of opportunities here.
Absolutely. It is. It's interesting. It's such an exciting book. I see the colors, and I was paging through it. It's small. It's convenient. You can stick it in your bag. You can read it. You can understand it with pictures. When should we start discussing HIV with our children? You did mention that off air. What are your thoughts, feelings, and experience?
YOULA, it's a very scary, and it's a little bit of an area which some people find taboo. But in a lot of training sessions, and of course I do training with lots of corporates, and I do training in Alex, and I do training in Soweto, and it is a question that a lot of parents ask. And actually it's not women, it's often both male and female, the mom and the dad that ask the question. And I wish I had a really like a hardcore, this is the right answer and this is the right age. There isn't the right age per se. It has to fit in with how comfortable you are, how comfortable you are in your family discussing these topics. But the one thing that has been incredibly positive that's come out of WITS's public health and the research department is that a lot of people are scared, and they believe that if we speak to children about sex early, it will lead them to having sex earlier. And what the literature has shown and the research has shown, that is complete nonsense. The more information our children have, and it has to be accurate. You can't avoid the topic. You can't fob it off. You have to say it as it is, using the correct language. The later children are having sex, the later their sexual debut. And that's something for parents to know. Don't be scared to go there.
One of my friends, actually, she was telling me about this course that a lady does about sexual orientation and how to approach it with children. And she was saying that before the age of 6, even 5, around 5, we need to speak to children about these topics, because they are not shy about their bodies yet. They're not embarrassed. They're not at that stage where they're feeling awkward. It's just a body for them. And
I agree.
They don't have any issues about it. So she was saying, you need to decide, is someone else going to tell your child in their own way, or are you going to approach the topic earlier, around the age of 5, when they're not embarrassed of their bodies, and approach it the way you would like your child to know?
And YOULA, let's be honest, so you don't discuss it because you're shying away.
Someone will.
Who will? Yeah. Who's going to tell our children about this? Their friends. Their friends. And do they know the right information? So the truth is, yes, bite the bullet. You sit down, you talk to them, and please use the correct terminology. Please don't make things cute. Please don't use accurate terminology so that they learn from the beginning, and that no one's allowed to actually invade their bodies.
Just to tell them that. I've also learned that, to tell them that. And it's all something that there's parenting courses out there as well, which are lovely, and they say the same thing. Keep telling them it's your private parts. You are the only one, and your parents and doctors, that are allowed to.
Absolutely. And when you go to the doctor's room, I will be there, especially when they're young, to make sure that that's all in a comfortable space. So correct. And Durex, YOULA, Durex picked up, and they're doing a school run. Our government is a little bit slower, and I'm not here to badmouth or to be derogatory about them, but you've also got to sometimes look at other corporates and look at different routes to get your message across. Now Durex, who really endorses most of my messaging, found the book, really enjoyed it, and they've taken 70,000 copies on a school run.
Awesome.
So they are taking the book, and each student gets a copy of the book. And I want people to know that if anybody needs a copy of the book, to please get in touch with us. I'm only too happy and gracious.
I think let's just tell people to get their pens ready. So later on, we will be giving Marina's number out, and maybe you can get a copy as well. Buy it. Where can we buy the book?
Well, at the moment, Exclusive in CNA had thousands of copies right at the beginning. But now, website, you can download it. It's 20 Rand a book, which isn't a lot.
That's excellent. Is that on Amazon?
It's actually, you have to put it in a cart and you buy it off my website. And the other option, easier. And the other option is to call us. And if you want to ask any questions, Facebook, and I really am available to answer any questions, anything that people don't understand. If people want me to come and train, anything like that, I'm only too happy to do it.
If you've just tuned in, just a reminder, we have Marina Coleman in the studio, Coleman in the studio, and a wonderful book about AIDS. You're welcome to come past. We'll hear for another half an hour at least chatting to Marina Coleman and this fantastic book. What's it called? You know, I didn't ask you the title of the book.
Oh, that was very clever.
Yeah.
But YOULA, I didn't want to be clever. And to be honest, when I went into Exclusive, I was sitting and I was a bit like, you know, what was the name of this book that I'm looking for? The truth is I wanted to keep it simple so people would remember it. So it is very simply called HIV and AIDS.
Okay, HIV and AIDS. This is the book. Very well priced, very nice and illustrated so that you can show your kids and so that you can understand everything about it. And many of us, I mean, I've had the experience of having people that worked in my home that had HIV. I think most of us have had this experience. And even from that point of view, I guess we'd like to know more information about what we can do to help them, what we can do to help our families. Is that kind of information in there? And where do we stand in South Africa when we look at AIDS today? I know that we were the country with the highest numbers. Is that still the case?
Absolutely. YOULA, the three very, very interesting statistics, and I don't get bogged down in stats. I have tried to keep it simple and accurate, but the three statistics that are in the book in sub-Saharan Africa that are very relevant and actually pertain to our continent, to this continent. The one thing is that women are getting HIV 3 times more than men.
Sure.
And that's just the nature of our bodies. It's the nature that we are, you know, as women, we are the child rearing. We're the ones that fall pregnant. So our bodies are designed to keep keep semen in us for as long as possible.
Right. And that actually is what causes it.
So that's why women are contracting it so much more easily than men.
Sure.
And the second stats, and this is for me
stat.
very scary. Highest age group or the most vulnerable group are 15 to 24-year-olds. Very scary for me.
Those
are children.
It is. And they're so young. They've got their lives ahead of them. Is it because of ignorance? What is it that people are still getting it that much?
Well, at that particular age group, it's because they're not getting the right information early enough. They're not being, I mean, these are children. Our children have grown up in a world that has HIV. HIV has been around for 30 years. So my daughter certainly has grown up always knowing about HIV. But YOULA, the support system, the thing about our families, the thing about our caregivers, the thing about family and friends, everyone's tired of this topic. And we acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge that it's cliched, it's tired. Everybody knows a little bit about HIV and AIDS, but it isn't going anywhere.
And it's not something that we can choose to be tired about, is it?
We
may say so, but that's irresponsible. I mean, especially when we have children. And you see, you say in your family, your daughter's known about it all the time. But not in my family. I mean, my child's 6.5. He's still small, the older one. But point is that I doubt in most families, and I don't know, listen, ask yourselves, have you spoken about it with your kids? I don't think so, as much, because this is what you do. So this is what you've shared with your family and your experience. But I have to wonder if most people would be doing that in their families. So maybe we adults that have heard about it, as you say, for all these years, we're a bit tired of it. But our children certainly need to know, especially if it's from 15. That is a shocking statistic to me. Shocking. At 15 years of age, that a child could actually be diagnosed with that. Your life comes crumbling. But I know that there are antiretrovirals. Tell us a little bit about how those affect.
I have to say that for me, living in the world and experiencing how positive ARVs are and what they're really doing, it's completely changed the focus of our work at the moment. So initially everybody was so caught up in how are we going to get rid of HIV, and suddenly there's a whole new trend, and this new trend is all focused around ARVs. People are living longer on it, a lot more accepting culturally than it was when I first started the work. People are acknowledging that by taking, almost like diabetes, if you are diabetic, if you have high cholesterol, and you take medication, it will prevent you from later becoming really ill. And it's the same thing with ARVs. Change the face of the world. And today, what government and what all countries are talking about is prolonging people from getting AIDS. So the virus is around. The virus, we can prevent our children from getting HIV by spreading the word, by condom use, by being open and honest. But ARVs has completely transformed treatment and giving people a lot longer and a chance for living for the next 20 more years, 20 years on.
So if you get, because the HIV/AIDS thing has always been a bit of a difficult one to understand. What is HIV? What is AIDS? How do you know, it's something that I think all of us, that's what we wonder. Getting HIV, I know doesn't mean you've got AIDS yet, full-blown AIDS, but what does the antiretroviral do then to actually intervene?
Okay, brilliant question. I'm so pleased, YOULA, because one of my chapters in my book says that a lot of people make the mistake of calling it HIV, and almost like /AIDS, as if it means the same thing, and it does not mean the same thing.
Yes.
The one is the virus, as you rightly said, and the second part is that people will later develop when your body and your immune system is so tired from being attacked by this virus. That is the cleverest virus that is around.
Really? Is that
so
what scientists
clever
and research
that it clearly shows? It chops, it changes, it hides in your body. And in the end, what happens is AIDS becomes, it's a syndrome. It's a whole lot of these diseases that are around us and viruses that are around us. TB, a certain type of cancer, which is called sarcoma, Kaposi sarcoma. All these things attack your body because your body with HIV is so tired and depleted. So you then take ARVs, and what ARVs does something really clever. It pushes the HIV into the corner of a cell, and it pushes it right down, and it gets your body's immune system to become really healthy and to build up. The HIV is still in your blood, the HIV is still in your body. It will never disappear, it will never go away, but it keeps it so low that it's called it's undetected. So you had to have
they're very effective.
Very, very effective. And now it's no longer, hearsay or maybe, and let's look at options. ARVs is the right way to go. And it's becoming where before you would start ARVs when something called your CD4 count was quite low. It's now worldwide. It's starting at a stage where your HIV, with the HIV level, is actually in the CD4 count is higher. So
is that because antiretrovirals have changed?
More efficiently. They work more efficiently, and your chances of stopping your body from getting TB and getting all these AIDS syndromes slows it down completely.
So you can have a normal life.
Absolutely. You can have a normal life, but you cannot change your regime of ARVs. In other words, not that you cannot change it, but once you're on ARVs, you cannot take a tablet one. And at the moment, the government's also, which is very exciting for us. In the book, initially, there was something called HEART, which stood for a combination of 3 different drugs. Nowadays and today, the ARV is actually 1 tablet a day.
Oh, wow.
And
easy to
take
have the treatment.
But you have to take it at the same time every day. You can't change it. You can't share it. You can't decide not to take it one day and then take it the next day. Because your first line of attack against HIV is your best chance of fighting it and being efficient.
So if you're not going to be committed to taking the medication and dedicated, then you will have problems. But if you do, how expensive is the treatment? I mean, I know that government is helping a lot. How far have we come in that regard?
Well, government will always have its weak links, and will always have that you have to go to a provincial hospital, and you can't just go to your local clinic, YOULA. That doesn't exist anymore. What they do is they're also trying to make sure that they're getting the statistics right and they're getting the numbers right of people that are coming to clinics for ARVs. So it's bigger provincial hospitals that you go to get your ARVs. If, however, you choose, as I have done and a lot of people I know have done, if you have a staff member and you choose to pay for it yourselves, at a chemist, and of course you will have to go to your doctor, and he will give you a script.
Okay.
You will get that one tablet a day, and it costs 550 Rand a month.
Okay.
And if you can afford it, good and well, because then you're really monitoring the person that you live with, or the person that is ill. You're making absolutely sure that they're doing well. Anything that goes wrong in that period of time, like if they get excessively sick, or if they're feeling weak, you have to keep going back to the doctor.
How dangerous is it, as you mentioned, living with somebody that has AIDS and or HIV rather, and taking antiretrovirals? How dangerous is it for the family?
You know, initially everybody was in a panic, nobody understood. In my book, I've got a whole page that clearly stipulates and states that it is still today, it is still so completely safe. I mean, there's certain things that are common universal rules, like blood. And I know that 4-year-olds at schools, and it certainly was applicable at my children's school, and I know Saheti does the same thing, that if a child gets cut, if there's a wound, if someone is bleeding, the first port of call is to put gloves on and to call somebody else for help. Nobody touches blood. That's a universal rule. That's got nothing to do with HIV.
Okay.
What it has to do with is really good common practice. HIV in your home, your housekeeper, or I'm going to use the housekeeper as an example, who has HIV is not going to give your child or yourself or your husband or your other employee HIV.
And what about giving your family TB? Just to be devil's advocate here.
Being devil's advocate, YOULA, TB floats around us. TB is around every single day, no matter where you go, we have TB. The only time we get TB is when our immune system is depleted. So, your housekeeper has HIV, she's not on ARVs, she gets TB. If your immune system is completely depleted, irrespective of whether she has HIV or not, if you are depleted, if your immune system is weak, you will get TB. So that's just the bottom line. But there are 3 ways, and this is now conclusive.
Right.
3 ways you can get HIV. The one is with blood, and it's very difficult today to get it through blood. The second way is through mother-to-child transmission. And the third way is unprotected sex. And that is the biggest cause. And that was my third statistic from earlier on when we were talking about the 3 stats. It is heterosexually transmitted in sub-Saharan Africa. That is the way we're getting HIV.
If you've just tuned in, just a reminder, Marina Coleman in the studio, a fascinating topic on HIV, AIDS, and her awesome book that she has sold. How many copies, Marina?
I'm very proud to say we've sold 300,000 copies.
What an achievement. So 300,000 copies. Perhaps you should have one in your family for your kids to know exactly what's going on. The book is full of illustrations, easy to understand, great information for all of us living in a country that has the highest number of HIV/AIDS in the world. So a fascinating topic. Marina Coleman in our studio. Stay tuned. She'll be with us for a little while longer, and we're going to chat to her when we come back from this music break. Marina, it's so awesome to have you here. We'll be back after our small break. In the studio with me, YOULA Pandazisis, Marina Coleman, and a fabulous show that we've been enjoying here for the past half an hour about HIV/AIDS and the awesome book that Marina has written and sold 300,000 copies of. So stay with us. We're going to be discussing the book as well, more topics that come up, and as we usually do in the show, we just feel around, fly by the seat of our pants and see what comes up. That's just the fun way to do things. Marina, a warm welcome again, and we've been chatting in the break, and it's been really fun chatting with you. We've been talking about the book. What else do you think that needs to be mentioned before we move on to anything else in the book?
Well, you know, the book, because it's so completely comprehensive, it depends very much is how do you share the message. And I found it very interesting that lots of people will say to me at the end of my training sessions, will say, thank you for giving us a copy of a book that we can now go back. We don't have to maybe necessarily have the conversation, but we can go back and give our children or our housekeeper or our partner the book and say, oh, I met the author of this book, and you read it and then let's discuss it. So there's a very clever way that you can communicate, because no matter how much we can sit and talk about it and discuss it, if you don't communicate it, there is no behavior change. And this whole thing is about how do we lead to behavior change? How do we make people change their behavior?
And starting with ourselves. Because what I'm finding is that people are so closed off in their worlds and in their belief systems, and it's so hard to make that change. And it's so easy to disregard something and just say, but it'll pass, or it doesn't affect me. But it does, because there are so many millions of people living with HIV/AIDS in our country. We cannot disregard it. Here we have our children and our children's friends and our communities living with this problem. And I wanted to thank our friend from Greece that has Facebooked us and telling us about the problems in Greece, where people in, I suppose, the right positions are kind of ignoring the problem or pushing it aside or not giving it the attention it deserves and helping those people in need. And we are in a stage of our, I'm hoping, development in humanity where we need to see each other as part of each other. We cannot just say, okay, you've got HIV, please move aside because I don't, I'm in my bubble. We can't do that. And this is what the great thing is about your book. It's because we understanding things, we can share the knowledge, we can help, and we can stop being afraid. It's wonderful.
And YOULA, also that you've actually got a voice, and you've got to realize that, and people will say to me, what do we do? This is, and by the way, the stats in South Africa at the moment is 5.4 million people are living with HIV, internationally and worldwide, because it is called a pandemic, because there are over 30 million people living with HIV in the world.
Living with this disease and living around this disease. I wonder if you'd consider sending it to other countries.
Well, we have, it was interesting, the next big step was going into Africa, and Rio Tinto last year met us and really liked the book, and so 10,000 copies went to Richards Bay. And the next challenge was to go into Africa. And when they met with us, because they have mines all over Africa, it was a very interesting, and this is something to laugh about. We were sitting and discussing, they've got a mine in Madagascar, and they were saying to me, can we please translate it in the language of the country? So what's the language of Madagascar? We were all saying all these strange, peculiar, and it's actually Malagasy, and we did translate it into Malagasy, as well as in Portuguese and French, and the book has gone into those African countries, and anybody who is interested in getting one of those copies again, the print run of those languages, because Rio Tinto bought the whole lot, are a little bit more difficult, but we're very happy to start printing.
Right, why not? I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. What also was an interesting part of your conversation that we've had here today was how you started off by trying to help, and you went into a place with children with HIV. And it just reminded me of how many different areas in life there are that we can go and assist and help. It's not something that we all think of doing every day, so well done for that. And there's so many areas I'm sure that one could help. Where could we get involved if we wanted to help, even in this HIV and AIDS world?
YOULA, I've got a great story, and I mean, my children came to Petrus School, which is just down the road here, and I remember lots of mothers who would come to me, and this was when I was working at Etimbeni, the children's home in Dawnfontein, before the Standard Bank days, and they would come up to me and say, oh, Marina, I've got lots of clothes and I've got lots of toys, and please can I give them to you, just get rid of them. And I remember really realizing and noticing the change in parents when I would say to them, how about you come and you bring your knowledge, and as your children grow up, you don't just drop off the clothes and drop off the toys, but let them experience what's really out there. And YOULA, you cannot believe the changes. I'm talking about really wealthy families whose children came to Etimbeni, who did the time, and you know what, the world has changed. Our children have social consciences. Our children want to make a difference. I mean, at schools now, and I don't know if you know, but in high school, you have to complete social work. You have to do community work.
Wow.
And
it's the right way, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I don't know why it wasn't encompassed in our syllabus. At the end of the day, that's we are part of this society, and thinking that we are individuals with our own problems and our own worlds is really, it's not great for our future and for our future generations and for helping our world. So that's really interesting that you could actually bring your kids. I never thought of that. Go to see,
let them work, and they don't just stand there and stare. They must interact. They must learn. They must communicate. And
isn't that the message of, boy, be careful, because it's going to drive that point home like nothing else.
Correct. And people do. You will see your children transformed. You transform yourselves. You give something. I mean, you've got a very natural talent with children. You could go with your son and read a book to a child who is at a place of safety or at an orphanage and change their child's life forever.
I had worked at Norman House. It was very, very hard for me, I must admit. it's hard being there and seeing how difficult and what the challenges are for these children. But it's awesome that we can contribute and maybe give a smile to someone that wouldn't have had that smile for that minute, for that hour. So it was inspiring to me that you began like that, and you so deserve the success that you've had. Well done, and what a wonderful message that you've been giving. I've noticed that we were speaking about Nelson Mandela, and that you have some stories as well to tell us, and I'd love to share that as well. If you want to end off with that, maybe we should put something else out there for our listeners before we go to that story, and telephone numbers as well. Should we give those numbers now?
Thank you. Thanks, YOULA.
Marina Coleman, let's hear those numbers, and get your pens.
Thank you. So the website would be marinacoleman.com, and that's very straightforward. Facebook, you can find me on my HIV and AIDS page by Marina Coleman. So that's straightforward, and it will take you straight to my Facebook page. And if anybody would like to contact me, I'm very happy to give you my email on air, which is marina@marinacoleman, and Coleman is with the COLEMAN.com.
Okay.
And the Mandela story now.
Yes,
Want to
tell
hear
us
it?
about that. I mean, it's just a time in our country where I guess we're all praying for him, and it is sad. We all have known that he's going to pass away at some stage. We don't know when that will be, but he's critically ill, and it's a time, I guess, of reflection. The past years that have gone, that have changed our country and made us the new South Africa, and of course he has been key to all those changes. The peaceful change that happened in our country, that's something that we can't forget. And here we are in these days when he's critically ill, and I think we're all thinking about him. So, yeah, the fact that you've met him and have a wonderful story, I think we would love to hear it.
It is a wonderful story. I mean, I must also note that Aki posted a photograph of himself recently from 702. He used to be at 702 with Mandela, and he gave this beautiful comment about how Mandela had come and changed their lives. And for me in my home, I was invited to go with my two daughters, and Danira at the time was about 9, and Zoe at the time was 4. And we went to have breakfast with this amazing man in his home in Alton. And we walked in, and we sat down. It was we were expecting it to be a quick breakfast, but he had he just had the manner to make you feel like you were that important. And it was just
and this is a world icon.
World icon, sitting and chatting. And he was telling me stories about early days when he would go into the surrounding rural communities and how people with HIV were being treated so abominably that he experienced firsthand how food was given into a separate hut with 2 children that were living without their parents. And I remember being completely shocked that this great man was passing the right information and telling people not to be frightened, to share, and not to be frightened of people who had HIV, that it wasn't something that
he wasn't frightened of apartheid, HIV
for him
should be
nothing. And right at the end, my lovely little daughter said to Mandela, "Please will you come? My mother's famous for her Greek lambs." And Mandela looked at Danira and Zoe and said, "I'll tell you what, if your mother continues doing what she's doing, I'll come to your house for some Greek lamb." Awesome. And that's our last memory, and I hope that he passes peacefully, and that as a country we all just continue to live the legacy of making a difference.
Absolutely. And in his honor, keep the peaceful way about us. Continue to just improve our country and move forward, making ourselves all one, black and white. I mean, I think that's his message, and we need to honor it no matter what. So it's awesome having spoken to you today. I do wish that you can continue this work, because clearly over 5 million people are living with this disease. They need guidance. We as a community need guidance as a country, and our children as well. You've given us a great tip to help our children understand all this. Really wonderful message. Congratulations for this book, and it was clearly inspired. Carry on giving as you
Thank you, YOULA. Thank you so much, and we will keep in touch, and lots of love. Thank you for having me on your show.
Marina Coleman. One more time, that email just before you go.
Email is marina@marinacoleman.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.